Right, yet another video on wet sanding. I don't like dry sanding. I've tried it, I didn't get on with it. Keep putting tram lines in the primer using 180 if you're not careful. So this is a bit of 400 and an old-fashioned block. Alright, piece of paper, cut it and just block away. It's water, nothing else. If you want to be a bit funny, you can have a bit of soapy water, helps to stop it clogging up. Right, after it's got like that, I'm just going to show anybody who yet again doesn't know what wet sanding is, what it looks like. I just use this bit of rag. There. Now the guide coat has revealed, yeah, you can see that, revealed all these patches. And so what you do is you carry on. This is an old piece of 400 because I can't be bothered to swap over to a new piece, but it's not too bad. And you keep blocking it, and I'm not going necessarily like that all the time because you might. I am going, as they keep saying, at a sort of 45 degree. I'm sort of running at an angle like that. And you keep going. And scrape it off with your hand. Wash out the thing. And do it again. Wash it out. Another thing, if you just concentrate on that little spot, you will rub down that little spot. Exactly. So instead, what I'm doing is I'm evenly blocking down the whole surface. So I'm doing a pass over the whole lot and back over, and then wipe it off and have a look. I'm not just doing that because you will create a hollow. So rub it the entire surface down to equal it out over that area. Yeah, it's nearly gone now. This has got, I think it's 3 coats of thin down 10% primer. There isn't a lot on it. There's a bit of filler work on it just to get the curvature right, but there's nothing more than a little skim just to correct my crap mould. I am going straight there, I must admit, but if I just leave you with, oh no, I can use this here. That's a piece of rubber and you can use that like a squeegee. Yeah. There we go. That's the basics. There's a little bit more there. I think another pass there will sort that little bit out. But you can see what the effects of having a guide coat are and block sanding, and that's basically it. And you just go over the whole thing. When you get to little places like on the edge, you can just, I don't know, have this piece of paper because it's at it, and just go around the edges just to tickle them off in case there's a sharp. I can feel that. That feels a little bit, oopsie, a bit furry. Just wipe it along. Yep, smooth. And that's all you need to worry about. That's it. I don't know what all the fuss is about. Quick shot of the high-tech filming platform just to show you yet again what block sanding is. Mounting for putting my phone on, attached to a lamp stand, standing on an old piece of wood. What a lash up. But anyway, I'm just going to give you a close-up now, yet again, try to show this as a close-up of it disappearing, blocking it, and then that's it. I'm not going to bother with it anymore. Right, let me get around the other side. This quality filming stand. I think it's this little bit we're looking at. Hang on. Yeah, hang on. Yeah, right. This is a new piece, 400 wet and dry paper on a rubber block, and that there is a quarter of a sheet. Fold it in half again. So it's 4 halves out of one piece of paper. Work that one out. So there we go. I keep going. Well, I can feel that. It feels absolutely disgusting because it's bumpy. There that. Clean off the back of the block. I've got a bucket of clean water down on the floor, and I've got it. Well, at least half a bucket of water, because then all your dirt falls to the bottom of the bucket. And that is now beginning to go. Let's just do a little bit of work here to blend that in, otherwise I'm just creating a lot of, so it gets all sort of built up on the badge. You can just go like that, that'll be enough. And hopefully I won't rub through, and I have just started there. So I'll have to try and steer around that so I don't rub any more. But I probably won't worry about that a little bit. Now I'm just going a little bit more careful, because I know that the stuff's getting thin. I'm not sure if that's rubbed through or that's guide coat. No. If you get to the point where you think, is that guide coat or is it rubbing through, if you just give it a couple of light rubs and it disappears, it was guide coat. But if the patch gets bigger, it was rubbed through. So I don't rub like a complete lunatic and just rub it right away bold, but I won't be bothering with that. If this was metal, I suppose you might get a bit of lifting around there. Your base coat, but put your base on. The first coat fairly dry. Don't have a great wet coat, and you won't get any problems. But because this is fiberglass, it's like it's all, the car is made from the same material as the fiberglass filler, and so it's all one material. It's not like metal primer. So that's it. That's gone now. That defect, I can't feel it, and that's basically it. That's what the guide coat's for. Without that guide coat, you will have hideous bumps and lumps in it. Right. Last little bit about this guide coat business is all I've used. I'll be back in a second. Is have a look. Just an aerosol can. That is matte black. Well, it's actually satin black there. I picked up the wrong tin, but it doesn't matter. You use either. You just, what do you do? Just spray a bit over the, just like that, all over the surface. Let that dry off 2 or 3 minutes, and away you go. A nice good layer of guide coat's quite good, as opposed to just a little thin layer, because it starts to show up quite black in places when it starts to get, when it's a large amount of guide coat, you can see it easy. But when you start getting little places, if it's nice and dark, the guide coat, or a good layer of guide coat, you can still see it when it's there. For instance, when it's getting a fainter or a smaller impression in the surface, you can still see it. So a good coat, as opposed to a little sparse coat, is a better idea. I should just do a little bit more, but I don't see the point in milking this out any longer. because there's plenty of other videos on the internet, and I like watching my friend Pete on DIY Auto School or Southwest Rod and Customs. If you can stick the swearing, some of it's, I don't know, take it or leave it videos, but some of them are very interesting. A bit like this. Some of it's a load of rubbish, and some of it's informative. There's bits and pieces I think that are making a lot of sense, but some of it, well, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. But I started making the videos because I may as well talk to you, stand up here and talk to myself, quite frankly. So for a bit of a laugh, I started making some videos. I've got an interesting video, which I haven't put on yet, of an apparition that appeared in my primer. An image of David Bowie. Or is it Leonard Nimoy? But I haven't put them on the internet yet because it takes me for flipping ever to upload them. But basically, that is what you've got to do to the whole car. And to be quite honest, I like wet sanding, I think, as opposed to dry sanding. If you was going to do any dry sanding, I would suggest only doing 50%, blocking it down with 180 paper, and still have your guide coat. Get it down to a point where the last bits, and then go back to wet. And that's my suggestion, because that's what I've been doing, and it doesn't work too badly. Only thing is wet sanding, you can only stick it for a while because your hands end up like a prune. So you have to keep, you know, dry your hands off every whipping trick, keep your hands dry. Otherwise you can't stick it, and then perhaps stop for half an hour and then come back to it. But, you know, I haven't been at that more than really 5 minutes really, and I've more or less done it. I've got a little bit of tickling around here to do. But that's it. That's 400. I might... I sometimes think about stopping at this point and going over to a bit of 600 just to finish it off, but that surface there, that's perfectly good. That's a good key, that surface there, 400, to take your base coat and get your base coat to grip well, because you want your base to grip to the primer. It's not like cellulose primer where your base coat will hit it and melt and stick to it. I can wipe that over with a thinner's rag and it won't come off. So your paint isn't hitting that surface and melting and sticking. It's going to just hit it and grip. It's only going to glue itself to the keyed surface. So a little bit rougher with 2-part primer, I would imagine, is better than having it a little bit finer, wet and dry. I certainly wouldn't do it 800. I've done 1K primer at 800 before, but like I said, when you spray your base or your 1K paint onto the surface, the thinners in it, in that paint will melt into the primer surface. But that doesn't happen on 2K, so it is literally only gluing itself to the surface. That's how I see it anyway. So correct me if I'm thinking wrong, but that's as far as I got with that. I'm not going to do any more on this pesky wet sanding. But that's my point of view. 400, maybe block it down to start with a bit of wet, dry, 180, and just to get the bulk of it done. It is a little bit quicker that way. Do a bit of shaping that way, but finish it off wet. I think it does come up a nicer finish. I think it does. I've just tried, I've been doing it now for the last couple of days on this job, and it certainly seems a better final surface for paint. It's more controlled, it's got a better action to it, the sanding. And I haven't got any dust, well I got water. If I'm dry sanding, I've got a load of dust and all this dust is everywhere. And then I've got to have a mask on. So you don't want to breathe in the dust, but this is only wet. There's a bit of water on this sponge, on this paper. What's the big deal? I don't see the problem really. Only thing is it make the wrinkles your hands up. So it's 6 of one and half a dozen of another. So, but I'm going to stick with the old-fashioned wet sanding. I think there's places for dry sanding and there's certainly places for wet sanding. There might be places on a car where you don't want to do wet sanding because you'll have a load of water getting in somewhere you don't want to do it. So dry sand that bit, but wherever you're doing a door and the water is running off the side, or like I'm doing here, where you can clean up the water, I think wet sanding's the way to go. That's me, but that's, you know, you've got to do it yourself and decide. Anyway, that's enough of that old drivel. Just a quick mention, I'm also using a sponge that when, there's my bucket of water. If nobody knows what a bucket of water looks like, there, it's a bucket of water. When I'm blocking this down, it's all covered in water and it's all horrible. Alright? And put your paper down that way up so you don't get a load of crap on it. When it's all covered in muck and rubbing down, I've got a sponge. I'll just wipe off the worst of it. So that I can, I haven't got gallons of water flowing around the garage floor, around what I'm looking at. But this is what I'm looking at. So I've done that surface now over, apart from that one little spot I rubbed through. I'm annoyed about that. But if you look at the primer and where the light is hitting with that, where I've wiped it with a sponge, you can see how the light isn't bending the reflection of the light in the surface, and that's how flat that surface is, or isn't flat, but how even the surface is, where there's not a lot of rippling going on. Unlike there's a little, you can see how it's kinking that line a little bit there, but if I bring that line across, you can see it moving a little bit there as it ripples. But that there, I think, now you can see the ripple in that there's a ripple, so it's sort of about there, and then I go there, it's sort of gone, and then there, there's a little bit of something there. But that is pretty good. What happened is when I put these roof panels in here and shut them down on the rubber seal that goes in here, through the tension of the rubber seal, lifts the roof panel out the thickness of the roof panel. So what I had to do is I put some, I measured that, it was the thickness of the panel, and I put some other blocks of, I think I used like a plasticine type material and bits of rubber, and I put the panel in, and I had to, where's my hand gone? I had to skim the surface of the roof up to the level of the panel all the way around, so that it was flush or very near flush. So if the rubber relaxes and the roof panel becomes lower, I can get around that by putting the odd harder piece of rubber in as a rubber stop to keep the roof up level. But if it would never come down, I couldn't rely on the fact that the rubber would relax and allow the roof panel to come down and become flush. Otherwise it would look stupid. I'd rather fix it at this stage, knowing that when I put the seal in, it'll squeeze down and be as near as flush as I could get it. So there's a little bit of a skim. The roof, when I made the original plug for this, it wasn't perfect. I ended up chasing hollows and pits and whatever, and I got it to a point where I said, right, enough's enough, and I made the mould, and there was a little bit of a defect here, and I've had to, there's actually an intentional kink there in the roof, as as there is there. There's an intentional, comes up that far, then it kinks and goes flatter, and then it kinks and goes down there, as opposed to an enormous great egg of a shape. Because I would have hated it if this roof came up and had an enormous egg bump. So I've made this roof quite low so that it doesn't look a bulbous, enormous wart on top of an AC Cobra, because I think soft top roofs are like a pram, and I think the short hard tops, they don't look right. It isn't long enough. Why they don't make the short hardtop roof go back to the hinge line of the boot, I don't know. They always stop short. They could go back another 6 inches and get the slope better. I did think about doing that, but I went the full hog and make the lemans roof that go right back over. And when you do that, you've obviously got to build, well, you don't have to, but the only way you can open your boot lid is if you've got a hinge out back. So I had to make a tailgate. It has been an enormous amount of work. And then I went one stage further and I made pivot, these roof panel parts that lift up, gull wing panels, targa tops, and you can, by removing the hinge pins, you can take them out. So if you want to, you can drive along the roof panels out and never take the roof off again. I expect that's what will happen, because this is England and it rains all the bloody time. So, or it threatens to rain. The last time I went out in this car, there was a big black cloud chasing me all the time. I had no roof whatsoever, and eventually it caught me and it rained, and while I was moving it was okay, but the windscreen wipers didn't work because all the water was on the inside of the screen. So in the minute I stopped, I got wet. But so hence, I made a roof, because I couldn't guarantee any other roof would fit my car. They would be near enough. I expect this line here where it matches the car wouldn't fit, and that would have to be cut off, that flange, and then you make that flange, as I did, moulded that flange on the car and put the roof on top of that flange, the original plug, not this roof, the original plug, and then wherever it touched I filled it in, and then when I took it off the car, that matches the car, but the car is about 6-8 millimeters further down than that. I had to build up the surface with some cardboard, but it follows the contour of the card. So that's what I've done. So that fits my car, the shape of my car, where the windscreen is and everything. So will it fit another car? I don't know. Probably nearly. I expect you may even have to on another roof. You could even find that you've got to cut the roof right off, make that fit at the front, position this at the back and make good around the middle. Do a cut and shut job. Then it would fit. But all this moulding here that I made for all this, the gutter moulding and the separate roof panel mouldings, none of that would be the same. It'd all be different. You'd have to start again. Drive me cuckoo. I couldn't do it again. I don't think I could do that again. It was just an enormous amount of work. And even the bonnet, I've already done this once, inside of here, and it was rubbish here. It was defects here, everywhere, because this is the raw inside. I've had to redo it, and I've put a couple of coats on here now. I did this about a couple of hours ago. I probably could rub that down now, actually, but I won't for a minute or two. And there's still a bump there. It is what it is. So I'm intending, rightly or wrongly, I'm going to put the white lines on the outside, and I'm going to bring them round and put the white lines up the inside. So I saw a picture of one like that, and I thought it looked quite good. I was going to paint this white around here, all this middle piece. I was going to paint that white and leave that bit blue, because the car's blue, whatever colour the outside. You could do all of that white up round there and out to there, and then, well, we're up around that edge, and then scuff that up, and then mask up there and with the bonnet up the other way around, and paint your blue down and around that corner, and you'll have a small edge there which you can just lightly tickle off, a bit of polish, and Bob's your uncle. But I think I'm just going to paint it all over. I'm going to put white lines up the middle and go with that. It looked sort of, make something of it. Got to make something of it, because it's a load of rubbish. Don't get me wrong, for this, that and the entire car is a load of rubbish. They fall under the category of sports car, where you can get away with murder by calling it a sports car. It can be the most uncomfortable pile of old rubbish driving along the road, rattling and banging, but it's a sports car, so it's okay. That makes it okay, that does.